multiverse is not a simple thing. It sprawls across infinite realities, each with its own laws, its own heroes, its own darkness. In one universe, the Force binds all living things together in an endless web of connection. In another, metahumans and gods walk among mortals, defending a world that fears and needs them in equal measure. These universes were never meant to touch. But the barriers between realities are more fragile than most realize. And when experimental hyperspace technology collides with an unstable wormhole, those barriers can shatter like glass. The Razor Crest had been destroyed months ago, but the experimental shuttlecraft that replaced it was state-of-the-art New Republic engineering, or it was supposed to be. Din Djarin would never know what went wrong. One moment, they were jumping to hyperspace coordinates for Navarro. The next, the shuttle was tearing itself apart in a maelstrom of blue-white energy that looked nothing like hyperspace. He remembered reaching for Grogu's hovering pram, remembered the child's huge eyes widening in fear, remembered the viewport shattering as reality itself seemed to scream. Then there was only light and falling and silence. Gotham City on a rainy Tuesday night was already a study in human misery. But the smoking crater in Crime Alley added a fresh note of chaos to the symphony. The impact had pulverized concrete and sent nearby windows shattering into glittering rain. Steam rose from the crater's center, where something metallic and utterly alien smoldered in the downpour. No fire trucks arrived. This was Crime Alley, where the desperate and forgotten learned not to expect rescue. But someone always watched Gotham's darkest corners. Batman dropped from the rooftop with practiced silence, his cape spreading briefly like wings before he landed in a crouch at the crater's edge. His cowl's sensors were already analyzing the wreckage. Unknown alloy composition, energy signatures that didn't match any known propulsion system, and something else. Something moving. The twisted metal of what might have been an escape pod groaned as a piece of hull plating shifted. Batman's hand moved to his belt, ready for anything. Kryptonian tech, intergalactic threat, new god technology. What he wasn't ready for was the sound that emerged from the wreckage. A soft, frightened coo. He moved forward carefully, pulling debris aside with gloved hands. The metal was still warm, but not dangerously so. Another sound, a whimper this time, distinctly childlike. Batman's jaw tightened beneath the cowl. If someone had put a child in experimental aircraft, then he saw it. The creature was no more than 2 feet tall, with enormous dark eyes that reflected the bat signal's distant glow. Green skin, pointed ears that drooped with evident distress, and 3-fingered hands that clutched at a tattered piece of cloth. It looked up at him with an expression of pure vulnerability and made a sound that transcended language, the universal plea of a frightened child. "It's all right," Batman said, his voice automatically softening in a way that would have surprised most of Gotham's criminals. "I'm not going to hurt you." The child tilted its head, studying him with an intelligence that seemed far too old for its size. Then it lifted one small hand, and Batman felt something he'd only experienced a handful of times in his career, the sensation of an external force pressing gently against his mind. Not aggressive, not invasive. Curious, reaching out. Before he could process this, the child's eyes widened and it looked past him. Batman spun, following the creature's gaze to where 3 figures had emerged from the alley's shadows. Not muggers. Their posture was too professional, their approach too coordinated. Black tactical gear, no insignia, weapons drawn but not aimed. Government operators. "Step away from the asset, Batman," the lead agent said. Her voice carried the flat authority of someone used to being obeyed. "This is a matter of national security. Argus has jurisdiction." "Argus," Batman repeated, his voice dropping to its most dangerous register. "You arrived 30 seconds after an unidentified craft crashed in my city. Either you were tracking it, or you caused it." "Neither," the agent said. "But dimensional breaches trigger our sensors. That creature represents a potential threat that requires immediate containment." The child made another sound, pressing back against Batman's leg. The gesture was so instinctively trusting that something cold and protective ignited in Bruce Wayne's chest. He'd seen too many frightened children in Crime Alley. He'd been one himself, a lifetime ago. "The only threat I see," Batman said, "is 3 armed operatives pointing weapons at a child." The agent's expression hardened. "That's not a child. Our preliminary scans show—" She never finished. The child's hand lifted again, and one of the agents suddenly flew backward as if yanked by an invisible rope, his weapon clattering to the wet pavement. The other 2 spun toward the threat, and that's when Batman moved. 2 seconds, that's all it took. Batarangs disabled both weapons, a smoke pellet obscured vision, and when the smoke cleared, the Dark Knight was gone. So was the child. If you want to see more characters enter the DC Multiverse, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. 3 rooftops away, Batman landed in a crouch with the small creature cradled carefully in one arm. It looked up at him with those impossibly large eyes, made a sound that might have been gratitude. Up close, he could see the creature was wearing robes. Well-crafted, deliberately made. This wasn't some animal or experiment. This was a person, however unusual. "Alfred," Batman sub-vocalized into his comm. "Prepare the cave. We have a guest. Extremely unusual origin, possibly extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional." "And Alfred?" He looked down at the child, who had closed its eyes and seemed to be relaxing against his chest. "He's just a kid. Scared, alone, and someone's already hunting him." "Understood, Master Bruce." Alfred's voice crackled back. "I'll prepare the med bay and some warm milk. Does our guest have a name?" Batman looked at the small metal ball clutched in the child's hand. Some kind of sphere with scorch marks. No identification. No way to communicate beyond those expressive eyes and gentle sounds. Somewhere in the multiverse, someone was probably looking for this child. But until Batman understood what was happening, the safest place in any dimension was the Batcave. "Not yet," Batman replied, "but we'll figure it out." Behind them, Gotham's rain continued to fall, washing away the crater's evidence. The Argus agents were already calling for reinforcements, already reporting the loss of their target. And far above, in the watchtower orbiting Earth, anomaly alarms were beginning to sound as the Justice League's sensors finally processed what had just entered their universe. In the Batcave, in a city built on darkness and determination, a child from a galaxy far, far away took his first steps into a universe of heroes and villains, gods and monsters. Grogu didn't know any of this yet. He only knew that the tall figure in black had protected him, that the fear was fading, and that somewhere in the Force, different here, muted but still present, he could sense something he desperately needed: safety. At least for now. The Batcave's lights hummed softly as Alfred Pennyworth set down a tray containing warm broth, small portions of fruit, and what he optimistically called child-appropriate sustenance. In his decades of service to the Wayne family, Alfred had prepared meals for visiting Kryptonians, Amazonian warriors, and once, memorably, an aquatic king. A small green child from another dimension barely registered on his scale of unusual house guests. "Master Bruce," Alfred said, adjusting his impeccable cuffs. "I've taken the liberty of scanning our guest with the medical equipment. The results are perplexing." Batman looked up from the computer terminal where holographic displays showed the crash site analysis. The child, he'd started thinking of it as him, based on the clothing style and Alfred's instincts, sat on the medical bay's examination table, large eyes tracking everything with evident curiosity. He'd already tried to eat one of the scanning instruments, which suggested either profound hunger or a very young mind. Possibly both. Perplexing how? His cellular structure is entirely organic, carbon-based, fully compatible with Earth biology. Yet there are microscopic organisms throughout his bloodstream that don't match any known bacteria or symbiotic life. They appear to be generating energy. Quite a lot of it, actually. Alfred paused. More concerning, sir, is his age. He's obviously young, maybe 2 or 3 years old, developmentally. 50 years old? According to the bone density scans and cellular degradation markers. Batman's fingers stopped moving across the keyboard. "Say that again." "Our guest is approximately 50 years old, yet his cognitive and physical development suggests extreme infancy. Either his species ages remarkably slowly or something else is at play, combined with the telekinetic display in Crime Alley." Alfred's voice carried a note of genuine concern. "Master Bruce, this child possesses abilities that could classify him as an Omega-level threat, yet he has the emotional regulation of a toddler." As if to punctuate this point, Grogu reached out with one small hand, and the tray of food floated gently toward him. He plucked a piece of fruit from the air, examined it with scientific interest, then popped it into his mouth. His ears perked up with obvious delight. "He's not aggressive," Batman observed. "That display in the alley was defensive, precise too. He disarmed the threat without causing permanent harm." Which suggests training, or at least instinct. Alfred moved closer to Grogu, who watched him with cautious interest. "Hello, young sir. I'm Alfred. You're quite safe here." Grogu tilted his head, then made a soft cooing sound. He lifted his hand again, and this time Alfred felt the gentle pressure against his mind. Not intrusive, just reaching, asking. A child's question in a language without words. "Fascinating," Alfred murmured. "He's trying to communicate. I can almost sense emotions, intent." "Telepathy," Batman said, pulling up comparison files. "Or something close to it. There are documented cases, Martian Manhunter, some Kryptonian abilities, certain mystical practitioners. But this feels different, more fundamental." The Batcave's primary computer chimed with an incoming priority communication. Batman touched his cowl, and suddenly Superman's face filled the screen, his expression tight with concern. "Bruce, we need to talk. Something entered Earth's atmosphere 2 hours ago. The energy signature was... I don't have words for it. It wasn't Kryptonian, not Apokoliptian, not anything we've cataloged. Please tell me you didn't encounter..." Superman stopped mid-sentence, his enhanced vision clearly spotting Grogu on the medical table. "Is that a child?" "Yes. A child who just moved that tray with his mind." "Also yes." Superman's expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession. Surprise, concern, protective instinct. "Bruce, the Watchtower sensors went crazy when that pod crashed. Whatever energy source that child is connected to, it's reading like nothing we've ever encountered. Diana compared it to the old god's power. Fate is demanding an immediate meeting. And he hesitated. Amanda Waller has already filed a formal request for custody. Waller moves fast, Batman said, his voice cold. She's calling him a dimensional threat. Claims Argus has authority over extra-dimensional entities. Bruce, if she gets involved, she won't. Batman's tone left no room for argument. He's a child, Clark. Frightened, alone, possibly traumatized. I'm not handing him over to be studied like a specimen. On the medical table, Grogu had finished eating and was now attempting to levitate himself. His small form rising a few inches before settling back down with evident satisfaction. He looked at Batman and Superman's image on the screen, then pointed at Superman with interest, making an inquisitive sound. He seems to like you, Superman said, his features softening. Look, I understand your protective instinct, I do. But the League needs to know what we're dealing with. That kind of power in someone so young? Bruce, what if he can't control it? What if something triggers a response and people get hurt? Then we teach him control, Batman said. Same as we do with any young metahuman. This is different. You can feel it, can't you? That energy around him. It's like... Superman searched for words. It's like he's connected to something vast. Something that predates our understanding of power. Batman had felt it. In that moment in Crime Alley, when Grogu had pressed against his mind, he'd sensed something ancient and profound. Not malevolent, innocent even, but powerful enough to reshape reality if misused. Clark was right to be concerned, but concern didn't justify treating a child like a weapon. Watchtower meeting in 1 hour, Batman said. It wasn't a question. I'll bring him. But Clark, make it clear to everyone there, he's under my protection until we understand what happened. Non-negotiable. I'll let them know. Superman's expression turned sympathetic. Bruce, for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. That child needs someone to advocate for him. Just be prepared. Not everyone's going to see a scared kid. Some of them are going to see a potential threat. The transmission ended, leaving Batman alone with Alfred and Grogu. The child had curled up on the examination table, his eyes growing heavy. The adrenaline of the crash and escape was clearly wearing off, leaving only exhaustion. Without thinking, Batman moved closer and carefully wrapped him in a thermal blanket. Grogu's eyes opened briefly, meeting his, and something passed between them, recognition, perhaps, or simply the understanding that they were both orphans in their own way, both searching for safety in an uncertain universe. Sir, Alfred said quietly, I should point out that bringing an unknown entity to the Watchtower could be considered reckless. Leaving him here alone would be worse. If Waller's agents can track dimensional breaches, others can too. Batman looked at his butler, his oldest friend. Whatever that energy signature is, it's broadcasting his location. The Watchtower is the most secure location on Earth, and I need the League's resources to figure out where he came from and how to protect him. Or how to send him home, Alfred added gently. Batman hadn't allowed himself to think that far ahead. Somewhere in the multiverse, someone might be looking for this child. Someone who cared about him, who could explain his origins and abilities. But until they found that person, if they found that person, Grogu needed protection. The child's breathing had evened out into sleep, tiny chest rising and falling with perfect peace. In sleep, he looked even more vulnerable, more impossibly young despite Alfred's age calculations. Batman watched him for a moment longer, then turned back to his computer. Pull up everything we have on dimensional theory, mystical energy signatures, and xenobiological databases. Cross-reference with any historical accounts of similar species or abilities. And Alfred? Yes, sir. Prepare a portable containment field generator. Not for him, Batman added quickly, seeing Alfred's raised eyebrow. For anyone who tries to take him by force. Alfred permitted himself a small smile. Very good, sir. I'll also pack some additional snacks. Our young guest appears to have quite the appetite. As Alfred moved to prepare for the Watchtower meeting, Batman pulled up the satellite footage of the crash site. The trajectory was wrong for any conventional spacecraft. The energy displacement suggested something far more catastrophic than a simple navigation error. This wasn't an accident. Something had torn through the fabric of reality itself, and Grogu had been caught in the aftermath. The question was, had he been fleeing something, or had something been trying to reach him? On the examination table, Grogu stirred in his sleep, one small hand clutching the metal sphere he'd been holding since the crash. In dreams, he reached out through the Force, searching for the familiar presence of his guardian, his protector. But the connection was distant, muted, lost across impossible distances. Instead, he found something else. Something vast and cold, watching from beyond the stars. Something that had felt his arrival and was very, very interested. In his sleep, Grogu's ears drooped, and he pressed deeper into the blanket's warmth. Above, the Watchtower's orbital platform continued its endless watch over Earth, unaware that, in 1 hour, the Justice League would face a question that had no easy answer. What do you do when a child arrives from another universe, carrying power that gods would envy? Batman gathered Grogu carefully, preparing for a meeting that would determine the child's fate. Whatever happened in that conference room, whatever arguments were made about threat assessment and containment protocols, Bruce Wayne had already made his decision. This child was under his protection, and in any universe, that meant something. The Watchtower's conference room had hosted debates about world-ending threats, alien invasions, and the fate of humanity itself. But the tension in the air now felt different, more personal, more uncertain. 7 of Earth's most powerful beings sat around the obsidian table, and every eye was fixed on the small green child cradled in Batman's arms. Grogu blinked at the assembly with wide-eyed curiosity, his ears swiveling to track each new sound. He'd woken during the teleporter sequence and seemed fascinated rather than frightened by the experience. Now he was taking in Wonder Woman's gleaming armor, Green Lantern's glowing ring, and the Flash's constant micro-movements with evident interest. "Okay," the Flash said, breaking the silence. "I'm just gonna say it. That's the cutest apocalypse-level entity I've ever seen." "Barry," Superman said with gentle reproach, though his own expression had softened considerably since Grogu had waved at him earlier. Wonder Woman leaned forward, her warrior's instincts warring with something more maternal. "Batman, you said he defended himself in Crime Alley. Describe exactly what you saw." "Telekinesis," Batman reported clinically, though his hand remained protectively on Grogu's back. "Precise application of force. No wasted energy, no collateral damage. He disarmed a threat without causing permanent injury. The control suggests either extensive training or deeply ingrained instincts. Or both," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Golden light coalesced at the table's head, forming into the towering figure of Dr. Fate. Beneath the ornate helmet, Naboo's ancient consciousness studied Grogu with intensity that made even Batman tense. This child walks between order and chaos. I sense power older than Earth's gods, yet innocent of malice. The helmet shows me threads, connections to a force that does not exist in our universe, yet persists within him. Grogu stared at Dr. Fate with unusual focus, his small head tilting. Then he reached out, not with his hand, but with something else. Batman felt it, that gentle pressure of connection. And from Dr. Fate's sudden stillness, so did the Lord of Order. "Remarkable," Fate said softly. He asks without words, seeks understanding across the barrier of language. This is not telepathy as we know it. This is something far more fundamental. "Can you understand him?" Superman asked. "Impressions, emotions. He is lost, frightened, but not of us, of something else, something he fled from or was separated from." Fate's golden gaze intensified. "And there is something else, a presence beyond our dimension, watching, waiting." It felt his arrival. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Cyborg's technological components hummed as he processed data. "I've been analyzing the energy signature from the crash site. It's not registering on any conventional spectrum. But when I cross-reference with the mother box fragments in my systems..." He paused, his human eye widening. "There's a resonance. Faint, but there. Whatever power source this child is connected to, the mother boxes recognize it as significant." "Apocalypse," Wonder Woman said, her voice hardening. "If Darkseid becomes aware..." "He already is," Cyborg interrupted. 3 boom tubes opened near the crash site 40 minutes ago. They closed immediately when they didn't find what they were looking for, but... He looked at Grogu, his expression troubled. "They're searching for him." Batman's jaw tightened. Darkseid's interest was the worst-case scenario. The Lord of Apocalypse had spent millennia searching for the anti-life equation, a formula that would give him dominion over all consciousness. If he believed Grogu's power could aid that quest, "Then we protect him," Superman said firmly. "That's not a debate. He's a child. A child with the power to throw a grown man 20 feet without touching him," Green Lantern countered. He held up his ring hand placatingly when Superman's eyes flashed. "I'm not saying we throw him to the wolves. I'm saying we need to understand what we're protecting. That energy signature, Hal Jordan's ring, has been pinging warnings since he walked in. Whatever he's connected to, it's reading like a cosmic-level power source." As if responding to the discussion, Grogu lifted his hand, and Green Lantern's ring began to glow more brightly. Not threatening, curious. The child made an inquisitive sound, studying the green light with scientific interest. "He's interacting with the ring's energy," Hal said, fascinated despite himself. "Not controlling it, just feeling it, like he's trying to understand how it works." The Flash leaned closer, his naturally friendly demeanor winning a shy smile from Grogu. "Hey, little guy. I know everything's probably pretty scary right now. New place, new people. But we're heroes. That's kind of like saying we're professional good guys. Nobody here's gonna hurt you." Grogu reached out and touched Barry's chest, right over the lightning bolt emblem. For a moment, golden energy crackled around the child's fingers. Not harmful, just present. Barry's eyes widened. Whoa, did he just sample the Speed Force? "He's learning," Batman said, "analyzing the different power sources in this room. He's trying to understand where he is. And we're trying to understand what he is," Wonder Woman said. Her tone was compassionate but firm. "Batman, I trust your protective instincts. But Dr. Fate is right. There's something watching. something that wants him. We need information. Where did he come from? What is that power he wields? And most importantly, who or what is hunting him? The conference room doors hissed open, and everyone tensed as Martian Manhunter entered. Jon Jonz's red eyes immediately found Grogu, and his typically stoic expression shifted to surprise. "I apologize for my tardiness," Jon said. "I was investigating the crash site telepathically. I found echoes, psychic impressions in the surrounding area." He moved closer to the table, his gaze never leaving Grogu. "May I?" Batman nodded reluctantly. Jon approached slowly, non-threateningly, and knelt to Grogu's eye level. The Martian extended his hand, and Grogu studied it for a moment before placing his own tiny hand against Jon's palm. The room waited in tense silence as the two beings made contact. Jon's eyes closed, his breathing deepening. When he spoke, his voice carried wonder. "I see. A man in armor. Silver, gleaming, a protector. The bond between them is profound, not parent and child, but something equally deep. Guardian and ward. They were traveling together when something went catastrophically wrong. An explosion of energy, tears in the fabric of space. The child felt terror and loss, and then nothing. Only the fall." Jon opened his eyes, and they glistened with emotion. He believes his guardian is dead, lost in the catastrophe that brought him here. He is mourning. The assembled heroes absorbed this in silence. Even Hal's skepticism softened, faced with a grieving child's reality. "Then he's an orphan," Superman said quietly. "Displaced from his home, his guardian, everything he knew." "We've all lost people," Wonder Woman added, her warrior's mask slipping to reveal genuine sympathy. "We understand that pain." Grogu looked around the table, his enormous eyes moving from face to face. These beings were powerful. He could feel it, even with the Force muted and strange in this universe. But they were also kind, concerned. The tall one in black had protected him. The one with the cape who smiled had warmth in his eyes. The woman with the gold spoke with strength and compassion. The one with green skin understood loss. They were not enemies. They were something else. Something his guardian would have approved of. Heroes. "So what's our play?" the Flash asked, his usual levity subdued. "We can't exactly put him in foster care. Hi, we found this telekinetic alien toddler who's apparently 50 years old and being hunted by literal gods. Can you take him for the weekend?" "He stays in protective custody," Batman said. "The watchtower is secure. We have the resources to care for him and study his abilities safely." "And when Darkseid comes knocking?" Green Lantern asked. "Because if Cyborg's right about the boom tubes, it's not if, it's when." "Then we do what we always do," Superman said, standing. His cape settled around his shoulders with quiet authority. "We stand together. We protect those who can't protect themselves. That's what the Justice League is for." Wonder Woman nodded, rising as well. "I agree. But we need more information. Dr. Fate, can you and Zatanna investigate the mystical aspects of his power? Jon, work with Cyborg to analyze the dimensional breach. Maybe we can find a way to contact his home universe." "And in the meantime," Superman added, looking at Batman, "he needs stability, routine, safety. Bruce, I know the Batcave seems secure, but I'm not keeping him in a cave." Batman interrupted. "Wayne Manor has resources. Alfred can provide care, and if threats come..." His voice hardened. "They'll have to go through me." Grogu yawned hugely. his sharp little teeth visible for a moment before he nestled closer to Batman's chest. The exhaustion of interdimensional travel, fear, and overwhelming new experiences was clearly catching up with him. Several of the hero's expressions melted at the gesture. "Meeting adjourned," Wonder Woman said. "Dr. Fate, Zatanna, begin your investigation. Cyborg, John, dimensional analysis. Everyone else maintain alert status. If Apocalypse makes a move, we respond with full force." She looked at Grogu one more time, her voice softening. "And someone find out what he likes to eat. That child needs proper care." As the meeting broke up, Superman approached Batman. "You know Waller's going to escalate. She won't let this go. Let her try." Batman's tone promised consequences for anyone who attempted to separate him from the child in his care. "Bruce," Superman's expression turned knowing. "You've known him for 3 hours. You're already thinking of him as yours to protect." "Someone has to." Batman looked down at Grogu, whose eyes were drooping closed. "You were right, Clark. I can feel it. That power around him. It's ancient, profound, and completely innocent. He doesn't understand what he is. He only knows he's lost and afraid." "Then he's lucky he found you," Superman said sincerely. "Just don't carry this alone. That's what the League is for. We're here." Batman nodded once, a gesture of grudging acceptance. As he moved toward the teleporter with Grogu sleeping peacefully in his arms, he heard the Flash whisper to Green Lantern, $20 says Batman names him within a week." "No bet," Hal whispered back. "Did you see his face? That kid already has him wrapped around his little 3-fingered hands." They weren't wrong, but Batman had learned long ago that protecting the innocent wasn't a weakness. It was the whole point. As the teleporter engaged, carrying them back to Gotham, Grogu stirred and made a soft sound. Not distressed, just acknowledging the transition. His small hand clutched at Batman's cape, holding on. And somewhere beyond the stars, in the fire pits of Apocalypse, Darkseid received a report about an unusual energy signature detected on Earth. A power that predated the source itself. A power that might finally give him what he'd sought for millennia. The hunt had begun. Amanda Waller did not believe in coincidences, fate, or mercy. She believed in control, contingencies, and the calculated application of force. Which was why, 72 hours after an unknown entity crashed in Gotham City, she sat in a secure Argus briefing room, watching footage that made her jaw tighten with barely contained frustration. "Run it again," she ordered. The holographic display replayed the scene. Batman emerging from shadows with a small alien child. 3 of her best operatives disabled in under 2 seconds. And then nothing. Smoke, misdirection, and empty air, where a potentially world-ending threat had been standing. Classic Batman. Infuriating, but classic. "Ma'am," her chief analyst said carefully, "the energy readings from the child's telekinetic display are unprecedented. Whatever power source he's tapping into, it doesn't match any known meta-human, alien, or mystical signature in our database. Which makes him exactly the kind of asset we need to contain," Waller said. She pulled up another file. Satellite imagery of 3 boom tube signatures appearing and disappearing near the crash site. "Apocalypse is interested. That alone tells me this child is either a weapon, a power source, or both. The Justice League has assumed protective custody," another analyst reported. "Our sources indicate Batman is housing the entity at Wayne Manor under the guise of humanitarian protection." Waller's laugh was cold. "Humanitarian? Batman found an interdimensional refugee with god-tier abilities and decided to play foster parent. Meanwhile, Darkseid is circling like a shark, and we're supposed to trust Earth's safety to Bruce Wayne's savior complex. She stood, her presence dominating the room despite her average height. I want full surveillance on Wayne Manor, track every League member's movements, and get me a meeting with the president. If Batman won't hand over the asset voluntarily, we'll need executive authority to take it by force. Ma'am, the analyst said hesitantly. Yes, with respect, it's a child. Forcible extraction could save billions of lives if that child loses control or falls into the wrong hands. Waller finished sharply. I don't deal in sentiment. I deal in survival. Get me those authorizations. As her team scattered to their tasks, Waller pulled up one more file. A psychological profile of Bruce Wayne. Orphan, trauma survivor, pathological need to protect the innocent. The child had landed in literally the worst possible hands for her purposes. Batman would defend him to the death, and the League would back him. Which meant she needed leverage, something Batman valued more than his principles, or someone. Wayne Manor's East Wing had been converted into something Alfred diplomatically called age-appropriate accommodations, and Bruce privately thought of as controlled chaos. In 3 days, Grogu had demonstrated an uncanny ability to find anything shiny, edible, or both. He'd also revealed a personality that was equal parts curious, mischievous, and surprisingly stubborn. Master Bruce, Alfred said, entering the study where Batman monitored global threat assessments. Our young guest has discovered the silverware drawer. Again. Batman looked up to see Grogu floating through the doorway, surrounded by an orbital array of spoons that circled him like tiny satellites. The child looked immensely pleased with himself, ears perked up in evident delight. Grogu, we talked about this, Batman said, using the name John had extracted from the child's memories. The silverware stays in the kitchen. Grogu made an innocent cooing sound, though his large eyes sparkled with clear understanding. One spoon continued its lazy orbit. He's testing boundaries, Alfred observed. Perfectly normal behavior for a child his developmental age. If we ignore the physics-defying levitation, of course. Batman rose and approached Grogu, kneeling to his eye level. I know you're bored, but we have rules here. Rules keep everyone safe. He held out his hand, including you. Grogu studied him for a long moment, then sighed, a surprisingly human gesture, and let the spoon settle gently into Batman's palm. Then, with deliberate care, he toddled forward and wrapped his small arms around Batman's leg in what could only be called a hug. Alfred made a sound that might have been a suppressed chuckle. I believe that's what the younger generation calls manipulative adorableness, sir. It's working, Batman admitted, his hand automatically moving to pat Grogu's head. The child's skin was surprisingly warm, and his ears twitched contentedly under the touch. The moment was interrupted by the Batcomputer's priority alert. Batman stood, Grogu clinging to his leg like a particularly determined barnacle, and pulled up the incoming transmission. Wonder Woman's face appeared on screen, her expression grim. Bruce, we have a situation. The House of Mystery just triggered a mystical alarm. Something's trying to break through the dimensional barriers. Same energy signature as Grogu's arrival, but much more aggressive. Zatanna says it's like someone's trying to kick down a door between universes. Location? Multiple attempts. Tokyo, London, New York, Gotham. Diana's eyes found Grogu, who had perked up at the sound of her voice. Someone's searching, and I don't think they're going to stop. Batman's jaw tightened. ETA to Wayne Manor? I'm already en route. Bruce, there's something else. Amanda Waller has been making calls. High-level government contacts, military brass. She's building a case for federal seizure. Let her try. She will, and she'll have legal authority to do it. Diana's expression turned sympathetic. I know you've bonded with him. We all have. But we need to consider, I'm not handing him over to be weaponized. I wasn't going to suggest that. Diana's tone sharpened. I was going to suggest we prepare for a fight. Because Waller doesn't take no for an answer. And if these dimensional breaches are what I think they are, we're about to have company from the other side. Grogu made a worried sound, his ears drooping. He looked up at Batman, then at Diana's image, clearly understanding that something was wrong even if he couldn't grasp the specifics. His small hand reached out, and Batman felt that familiar gentle pressure. Grogu seeking reassurance through the Force. It's all right, Batman said, lifting the child into his arms. We're not going to let anything happen to you. Alfred cleared his throat. Mr. Bruce, might I suggest activating the Manor's defense protocols? If Argus is planning an incursion, the lights died. Not a flicker, not a brownout. Complete instantaneous darkness. Batman's hand went to his utility belt, but before he could retrieve a light source, emergency power kicked in, bathing the study in red emergency lighting. The Bat computer rebooted, its screen showing a single message in block letters. Unauthorized teleportation detected. East Lawn. Diana, how fast can you... Batman started, but the transmission was already dead, jammed by something powerful enough to override Wayne Tech encryption. Through the study windows, he could see them. 3 figures standing on the Manor's perfectly manicured lawn, their forms wreathed in the distinctive energy signature of boom tubes. But these weren't parademons or apocalypse shock troops. These were sleeker, deadlier, new gods, elite warriors of Darkseid's court. The central figure stepped forward, and even at this distance, Batman could see the cold intelligence in her eyes. Granny Goodness, mistress of Apocalypse Orphanage and one of Darkseid's most loyal servants. Bruce Wayne, her voice boomed, amplified by some technological means. You harbor something that belongs to my lord. Surrender the child, and your world will be spared his wrath. Resist, and I will personally ensure your city becomes an example of Darkseid's mercy. Grogu whimpered, pressing against Batman's chest. His small hands clutched at the armor plating beneath Bruce's shirt, and the lights in the study began to flicker. Not from the power failure, but from Grogu's fear manifesting as telekinetic interference. Alfred, get to the cave, Batman ordered. Activate protocol, Omega. Sir, that will summon the entire League. That's the point. We're about to go to war. Alfred moved with surprising speed for a man his age, but before he reached the door, it burst inward. Not Granny Goodness's forces, something else. Black tactical gear, Argus insignia, weapons that crackled with energy designed to disable meta-human abilities. Amanda Waller stepped through the breached entrance, flanked by 6 operatives. Stand down, Wayne, she ordered. Presidential Executive Order 1089 grants Argus authority to seize and contain interdimensional entities posing a clear and present danger. You will surrender the asset, or you will be arrested for obstruction of national security. Batman looked at the Argus team behind him, the new gods on his lawn, and the frightened child in his arms. Grogu had started making a continuous, high-pitched sound. Not crying, but something else. A frequency that made Batman's teeth ache and caused the windows to vibrate. Waller, he said coldly. "You just made the worst tactical decision of your career. That child is terrified, and when he's terrified, he reacts." "Then sedate him," Waller snapped. "We have containment protocols." Grogu's hand lifted. The Argus operatives flew backward as if yanked by invisible cables, their weapons clattering uselessly to the floor. Waller herself staggered, held in place by nothing more than the child's fear and instinct. Outside, the new gods began advancing toward the manor, clearly deciding that the human conflict made perfect cover for their own extraction. And that's when the sky lit up with red and blue. Superman hit the ground like a meteor, placing himself directly between the new gods and the manor. "You're not welcome here," he said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Leave. Now." Granny Goodness smiled, revealing too many teeth. "The Kryptonian. How delightful. Lord Darkseid will be pleased to know you've chosen your side." More boom tubes opened, disgorging parademons. The invasion wasn't subtle anymore. Apocalypse was here, and they wanted Grogu. Wonder Woman crashed through another window, her sword already drawn, eyes blazing with warrior fury as she took in the scene. Argus operatives scattered across the floor, Granny Goodness's forces advancing, and Batman holding a child whose power was causing the very foundations of Wayne Manor to shake. "Diana," Batman said calmly, "get Waller and her people out of here. This is about to get ugly." "Already ugly," Diana replied. But she moved to comply, hauling a protesting Waller toward the exit. Green Lantern materialized next, his ring creating a massive barrier around the manor. "Okay, seriously? We're doing this at Bruce's house? The property value alone—" "Jordan, focus!" Superman snapped, already engaging the first wave of parademons. Grogu's high-pitched sound intensified, and suddenly every window in the manor shattered simultaneously. The child's eyes had closed, his small face scrunched in concentration and fear. Around him, objects began to orbit. Furniture, books, debris, forming a protective shell that responded to pure instinct. Batman held him closer, murmuring words that had once been spoken to him after another night when violence came to Wayne Manor. "You're safe. I've got you. No one's taking you anywhere." And in that moment, with gods and governments converging on a single frightened child, Bruce Wayne made a decision that would define everything that followed. He wasn't giving Grogu up. Not to Apocalypse, not to Argus, not to anyone. If they wanted this child, they'd have to go through the Batman. And behind him, through him, stood the entire Justice League. The Battle of Wayne Manor would be remembered by those present as one of the most chaotic engagements in Justice League history, not because of its scale, but because three separate factions had converged with competing objectives. And a terrified 50-year-old infant was at the center of it all. Superman moved like lightning, his heat vision carving through parademon formations before they could breach the manor's perimeter. The creatures shrieked and scattered, but more kept coming through boom tubes that opened like festering wounds in reality. Granny Goodness watched from a distance, her smile never wavering, as if the carnage was precisely what she'd anticipated. "Kryptonian!" she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You fight so beautifully. Such passion to protect the weak. But you cannot be everywhere at once." She was right. Even as Superman disabled one attack wave, another group of parademons curved around the manor's west wing. Wonder Woman intercepted them with Amazonian precision, her sword singing through chitinous armor. But the sheer numbers were overwhelming. Inside the manor, Batman had fallen back to a reinforced section of the study. Grogu clutched protectively to his chest. The child had stopped making that high-pitched sound. But the telekinetic maelstrom around them continued. Alfred's antique furniture orbited like deadly satellites, and every parademon that attempted entry found itself violently repelled by invisible force. "Master Bruce," Alfred's voice crackled through the comm from the Batcave. "I've activated all defense systems, but I must point out that the manor is sustaining catastrophic damage. Your grandfather would be most displeased." "He'd understand," Batman replied, ducking as a chandelier tore loose from the ceiling and became part of Grogu's defensive array. "How long until the rest of the League arrives?" "The Flash is en route. 30 seconds. Cyborg is mobilizing from the watchtower. John is..." Alfred paused. "Sir, Martian Manhunter reports that the dimensional breaches are increasing in frequency. Whatever's trying to reach our universe, it's getting stronger." Batman looked down at Grogu, whose eyes had opened but remained unfocused, lost in instinctive defensive response. The child wasn't consciously controlling the destruction around them. He was simply reacting, and his power was shaping reality to protect himself. If this continued, if his fear escalated further, "We need to calm him down," Batman said. "Get him to feel safe." "Might I suggest," Alfred replied dryly, "that removing the invading army of extra-dimensional monsters would significantly improve the ambiance?" Outside, the Flash arrived in a red blur, his momentum creating a vortex that swept up 24 parademons and deposited them unceremoniously into Gotham Harbor 3 miles away. "Okay, who invited Apocalypse to the party? Because this is seriously bad form, even for them." "They want the child," Wonder Woman said, blocking a Mother Box-powered energy blast with her bracers. The impact drove her back 3 feet, heels carving furrows in the lawn. "And they're willing to level Gotham to get him." "Not happening," Green Lantern replied, his ring constructs forming an intricate web of barriers and weapons platforms. "Though I gotta say, having the fight at Batman's place is kind of poetic. He's always invading our personal space with random strategy meetings." A boom tube opened directly above them, and Kalibak descended, Darkseid's son, a creature of pure brutality wrapped in armor and rage. He hit the ground hard enough to crater the lawn, his beta club already swinging toward Superman. "The child!" Kalibak roared. "Father wants it alive. The rest of you can die screaming." Superman caught the beta club mid-swing, his expression hardening. "You'll have to go through all of us first." "Gladly." The impact of their collision shattered windows for 3 blocks. Kalibak was strong, perhaps not quite Superman level, but close enough that Clark couldn't simply overpower him. They traded blows that would have leveled buildings, each strike echoing like thunder. Inside the manor, Batman made a decision. Staying here turned Grogu into a fixed target. They needed mobility, space to maneuver. He activated his comm. "Batmobile to my location. Full armor configuration." "Sir," Alfred protested, "the Batmobile is in the cave. Getting it to your position requires..." The wall exploded inward, not from parademon attack or new god assault, from Argus. Amanda Waller had regrouped her forces and deployed something new. A massive powered armor suit, military grade, bristling with weapons. The pilot's voice boomed through external speakers. "Wayne, stand down. That entity is federal property under..." Grogu's hand lifted, and the powered armor suit crumpled like tinfoil, its pilot ejecting with a scream of terror. The child's eyes had shifted, no longer unfocused, but sharp, aware, and very, very angry. He made a sound like a growl, impossibly threatening from something so small. "He's reaching his limit," Batman said into the comm. If we don't de-escalate, he's going to bring down the whole manor. Then get him out of there, Superman replied, his voice strained as he grappled with Kalibak. Flash, clear Batman a path. Barry Allen became a red streak of motion, his velocity creating a corridor of displaced air and disabled enemies. Batman ran, Grogu held tight, moving through the chaos with practiced efficiency. Behind them, the manor's study collapsed entirely, buried under telekinetically hurled debris and parademon bodies. They emerged onto the eastern lawn just as Cyborg boom-tubed in, his systems already analyzing the battlefield. Okay, this is bad. I'm reading 7 active boom tubes, Argus forces regrouping on the perimeter, and... oh no. Oh no? The Flash repeated. I hate oh no. What's oh no? Cyborg's human eye widened. The dimensional breaches, they're not random. They're triangulating. Something's using them to pinpoint Grogu's exact location. As if summoned by his words, the sky itself seemed to tear open. Not a boom tube, something older, more primal. Reality peeled back like burned paper, and through the gap came a presence that made even the Justice League hesitate. It wasn't Darkseid. It was something from the other direction. A ship, sleek, silver, battered from what looked like catastrophic damage. It tumbled through the dimensional rift, trailing energy and debris, its hull scarred by burns that spoke of desperate combat. The ship didn't so much land as crash, tearing through Wayne Manor's north wing before grinding to a halt in what used to be the formal garden. Every combatant froze. Parademons, Argus operatives, and Justice League members all stared at the impossible sight. The ship's boarding ramp deployed with a hydraulic hiss, and a figure emerged. He was humanoid, clad in armor that gleamed like liquid mercury even under Gotham's perpetual overcast. A helmet with a distinctive T-shaped visor. Weapons that looked both primitive and impossibly advanced. And a stance that communicated one unmistakable message: mortal danger to anyone who stood between him and his objective. The figure's head turned, scanning the battlefield with professional efficiency, until his visor locked onto Batman and the child in Batman's arms. Grogu made a sound. Not fear, not distress, joy, pure, overwhelming relief. His small arms reached out, and the word came not from his mouth, but from his mind, projected with such force that every telepath on Earth felt it. Papa, the Mandalorian, because that's what he was, Batman realized, seeing the cultural markers in the armor and weapons, took 2 steps forward. His hand moved to the blaster at his hip, but not drawing, not yet. His voice, filtered through the helmet, carried exhaustion and relief in equal measure. That's my foundling, Din Djarin said. I'm taking him home. Granny Goodness laughed, the sound like breaking glass. How delightful. The child's keeper has arrived. Lord Darkseid will be most interested to meet you both. Amanda Waller's voice crackled over the Argus tactical frequency. All units, we now have 2 interdimensional entities. Revised objective, capture both. Wonder Woman's sword caught the light as she moved to stand beside Superman. Or, she said firmly, everyone stands down, and we talk like civilized beings. The Mandalorian's helmet tilted slightly, assessing, calculating. His hand hadn't moved from his blaster. Batman looked down at Grogu, whose entire small body was straining toward the armored figure. The child's emotions were broadcasting clearly enough that even Bruce could feel them. Recognition, desperate need, family. He's yours, Batman said. It wasn't a question. He's my responsibility, the Mandalorian confirmed. We were separated during a hyperspace accident. I've been searching for him. Through dimensional barriers, Cyborg interjected. his scanners working overtime. Your ship's drive system, it's not just damaged, it's fundamentally incompatible with our universe's physics. You tore through reality itself to get here. I go where he goes, the Mandalorian said simply. That's the way. Kalibak chose that moment to roar and charge, clearly deciding that two prizes were better than one. Superman moved to intercept, but the Mandalorian was faster. His hand blurred, and suddenly Kalibak was stumbling backward, a small device attached to his chest. The device beeped once. The explosion was contained, precise, professional, exactly powerful enough to disable without killing. Kalibak collapsed, smoke rising from his armor, his beta club clattering away uselessly. Every hero on the battlefield reassessed the threat level of the new arrival. Whistling birds, the Mandalorian said, as if that explained everything. His attention returned to Batman. The child, please. Batman looked at Grogu one more time. The child who'd crashed into his life 3 days ago. The child he'd protected, fed, started to care for. The child who was looking at the Mandalorian with such desperate hope that it made Bruce Wayne's chest ache with old, familiar loss. He'd been an orphan once. He knew what it meant to find family again. Slowly, carefully, Batman walked forward. Around them, the battle had fallen into tense ceasefire, everyone waiting to see what happened next. He stopped 3 feet from the Mandalorian, close enough to see the battle damage on that distinctive armor, the way the man's shoulders were set with exhaustion and determination. He's special, Batman said quietly. More powerful than you might realize. And there are forces in this universe that will never stop hunting him. Then they'll have to go through me, the Mandalorian replied. Same as they always have. Batman believed him. There was something in the man's stance, his voice, his presence. The absolute certainty of a protector who would burn worlds before letting harm reach his charge. He extended his arms, offering Grogu. The child practically leapt the remaining distance, small hands grasping at the Mandalorian's armor, ears perked up in pure joy. The Mandalorian caught him with practiced ease, cradling Grogu against his chest, with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the weapons bristling from his armor. Hey, kid, Din said softly. I've got you. We're going home. Grogu made a series of happy sounds, his small hands patting the Mandalorian's helmet as if confirming his reality. Then he turned back to look at Batman and raised one small hand in what could only be called a wave. A goodbye. A thank you. Batman nodded once, acknowledging. Granny Goodness's voice shattered the moment. How touching. Now, if you're quite finished with your reunion. The Mandalorian's other hand moved, and suddenly Granny Goodness was staggering backward, a smoking hole in her shoulder plate. His blaster had cleared its holster so fast that even Batman had barely tracked the motion. We're leaving, the Mandalorian said. Anyone tries to stop us, the next shot goes through your head. You think you can threaten Apocalypse? Granny Goodness snarled. You think you can steal from Darkseid himself? I'm not stealing anything. He's mine. And where I come from. The Mandalorian's hand moved to Grogu's head, protective and absolute. Family is everything. Superman stepped forward, hands raised peacefully. Look, I understand you want to protect him. We all do. But your ship is damaged, dimensional barriers are collapsing, and we've got 3 hostile factions who all want that child. Maybe we can help. The Mandalorian's visor turned to Superman, assessing. You protected him. While I was trying to find him, you kept him safe. Batman did. Superman corrected. We all did. But Bruce, he took responsibility. The Mandalorian looked at Batman, and even through the helmet's visor, there was recognition, one protector to another. Thank you, he said simply, but we handle our own problems. Even when those problems involve gods? Wonder Woman asked, her tone more curious than challenging. Your weapons are impressive, but Darkseid, we'll have to go through the Justice League, Superman finished. He looked at his team, and one by one they nodded. Even Green Lantern, who'd been most skeptical. You want to take Grogu home? Fine, but you're not doing it alone. Not with Apocalypse and Argus both gunning for you. The Mandalorian stood silent for a long moment, processing. Then, this is the way? This, Batman said, is what heroes do. The temporary ceasefire lasted exactly as long as it took Amanda Waller to regroup. Her voice crackled across every Argus frequency, cold and absolute. All units, engage. Authorization Alpha Black. Lethal force approved for the armored target. Tranquilize the child. The Mandalorian's reaction was instantaneous. His jetpack ignited, carrying him and Grogu skyward as tranquilizer rounds cut through the space they'd occupied a heartbeat before. He twisted midair, his blaster barking 3 times. Precise shots that disabled Argus rifle scopes without injuring the operators. Professional, restrained, but unmistakably lethal if pushed further. Waller, call him off, Superman shouted, already moving to intercept the Argus forces. This doesn't have to... Another boom tube tore open, and this time, it wasn't parademons. 3 more new gods emerged. Mantis, Canto, and Mad Harriet. Granny Goodness's personal cadre of elite killers. They moved with coordinated precision that spoke of centuries of combat experience. Their weapons already tracking the Mandalorian's flight path. The child and his keeper. Granny Goodness commanded, her wounded shoulder already regenerating with new god physiology. Alive. Lord Darkseid wishes to examine them personally. The Mandalorian's jetpack cut out, and he dropped into a controlled fall, landing on Wayne Manor's roof with Grogu tucked protectively against his chest. His free hand deployed a small device that expanded into a circular energy shield, technology that made Cyborg's scanners spike with interest. Beskar alloy plating, Cyborg muttered, his systems analyzing the shield's composition. And that energy signature, it's similar to the force readings we got from Grogu, but mechanically generated. This guy's tech is adapting to our universe faster than it should be possible. Because it's not just technology. Dr. Fate's voice intoned as golden light coalesced beside them. The Lord of Order had arrived, drawn by the dimensional chaos. That armor, that ship, they carry the resonance of the child's power. They are bound together through more than mere possession. This is a sacred bond, recognized by forces older than either universe. The Flash vibrated up to the roof, positioning himself between the Mandalorian and the approaching new gods. Okay, quick question. Are we protecting the scary armored guy with the cute kid? Or are we worried about the scary armored guy with the cute kid? Protecting, Batman said firmly, grappling up to join them. He's not the threat here. Mantis struck without warning, her claws extended, moving with speed that rivaled Superman. The Mandalorian shifted, his shield absorbing the impact, while his other hand drew a weapon that looked like a primitive staff. It extended with a metallic snap, and suddenly, Mantis was reeling backward, electricity crackling across her new god physiology. Amban Phase Pulse Blaster, the Mandalorian said, his tone almost conversational despite the chaos. Disruptor setting, Works on most species. He glanced at Batman. Your people should fall back. This is going to get worse. We don't fall back, Wonder Woman declared, landing beside them with her lasso already spinning. And you're not fighting alone. Grogu, pressed against the Mandalorian's chest plate, reached out with one small hand. The force rippled outward, not chaotic like before, but focused, controlled. The child was drawing comfort from his guardian's presence, and that stability was translating into precision. A nearby parademon suddenly froze mid-flight, held immobile by invisible power before being gently deposited on the ground, unconscious but alive. He's calmer, Jun observed, phasing through the roof to join them. With his guardian present, the child has emotional stability. His abilities are no longer reactive, they're responsive. Because he knows he's safe, Batman said, understanding clicking into place. Grogu's not just powerful, he's trained, and his guardian taught him control. The Mandalorian nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement. He's learning, still young. But yes, we've been working on it. Kanto chose that moment to boom tube directly onto the roof, his blade already descending toward the Mandalorian's exposed neck. The attack would have been fatal against almost any opponent. Instead, the Mandalorian's arm blurred upward, catching the blade against his vambrace with a metallic shriek. Pure Beskar, absorbing an impact that should have shattered steel. Impressive armor, Kanto purred. But armor can be penetrated, circumvented, removed. Grogu's eyes narrowed, and Kanto suddenly flew backward, launched by telekinetic force that sent him tumbling off the roof. Mad Harriet shrieked and dove after her companion, her wrist blades extended. Superman intercepted her midair, but two more boom tubes opened, disgorging fresh waves of enemies. They're not stopping, Green Lantern observed, his constructs now forming a multi-layered defensive dome around the roof. Every time we take one down, two more show up, and Argus is repositioning. They're bringing in heavier hardware. The Mandalorian looked at his damaged ship, calculating. His helmet turned to Batman. Your cave, the one underground. Can you get us there? Batman's cowl concealed his surprise, but his voice carried it. How do you know about? Tracked your movements when you took Grogu. Saw the entrance. Professional habit. The Mandalorian shifted Grogu to his shoulder, freeing both hands. I need time to repair my ship's dimensional drive. 1 hour, maybe 2, but not here. Too exposed. The Batcave is secure, Batman confirmed. Multiple defense layers, isolated power systems, and an explosion rocked the manor's foundation. Argus had deployed something heavy, possibly tank class. Amanda Waller's voice carried across tactical frequencies. Last warning, surrender both entities, or we level the entire structure. She's actually going to do it, the Flash said, disbelief coloring his tone. She's going to blow up Batman's house. Let her try, Batman said coldly. He activated a sequence on his gauntlet, and suddenly Wayne Manor's defensive systems came fully online. Hidden turrets deployed, energy barriers flickered into existence, and the entire structure seemed to transform from stately home to fortress. Alfred, evacuate to the cave. Full lockdown protocol. Already en route, sir. Alfred's voice replied with remarkable calm. Though I must note that your homeowner's insurance premiums will be quite remarkable after this evening. Wonder Woman's lasso snared 3 parademons simultaneously, her strength allowing her to use them as improvised flails against their companions. Bruce, if we're falling back to the cave, we need an exit strategy. Apocalypse will just follow, then we give them a reason not to. Superman interrupted. His eyes glowed red with building heat vision. We make the cost too high. We show them that Earth's heroes don't surrender, don't negotiate with extortionists, and definitely don't hand over children to be weaponized. Cyborg's arm cannon charged, power building until his entire frame hummed with energy. I can create a boom tube directly to the cave, but it'll take everything I've got, and I'll be offline for at least 10 minutes afterward. Do it, Batman ordered. The Mandalorian stepped forward, his stance protective as Grogu clung to his shoulder. Your team is risking a lot for strangers. You're not strangers, Superman said simply. You're a father protecting his son. That's all we need to know. Din Djarin, though none of them knew his name yet, stood silent for a moment. Then his helmet dipped in acknowledgement. When this is over, if we survive, I owe you a debt. When this is over, Batman corrected, you're going to tell us everything about where you come from, what that power is, and how to protect Grogu if he ever returns. Deal? Deal. Cyborg's systems reached critical charge. Boom tube opening in 3, 2, 1. Reality tore open, revealing the Batcave's dark expanse below. But the dimensional breach wasn't clean. Something else was using the opening, piggybacking on Cyborg's technology. Another presence, vast and cold, was forcing its way through. Dr. Fate's voice rose in alarm. Close it. Something is... Too late. The boom tube expanded violently, and through it came a sound that made every hero present feel primal fear. Darkseid's voice amplified across dimensional barriers, carrying the weight of absolute power. So, the Kryptonian protects dimensional refugees now. How predictable. The Justice League had faced Darkseid before. They knew his power, his cruelty, his unstoppable determination. But they'd never heard that particular tone in his voice. Genuine interest, almost curiosity. The child possesses something I have sought for millennia, Darkseid continued. A connection to a force that predates the source itself. Bring him to me, and I will allow your Earth to continue existing. Refuse. The sky above Wayne Manor darkened as 3 massive ships materialized. Apocalypse warships, bristling with weapons that could level continents. Dozens more boom tubes opened, and this time it wasn't just parademons. This time, it was an army. Refuse, Darkseid finished, and I will show you what happens when gods go to war. The Mandalorian looked at the sky, at the impossible fleet, at the forces that vastly outnumbered anything his universe could conceive. Then he looked down at Grogu, whose large eyes were wide with fear, but who trusted, absolutely, completely, in his guardian's protection. Din Djarin had fought impossible odds before. He'd faced criminal syndicates, imperial warlords, force-wielding Darksiders. He'd survived the Night of 1,000 Tears, the purge that had destroyed his people. He knew what it meant to stand against overwhelming power. But he'd never done it with allies like these. Grogu, he said softly. Close your eyes, Adika. This is going to be loud. The child obeyed, pressing his face against the Beskar chest plate. And in that moment, the Mandalorian made a decision that would echo across both universes. He removed his helmet. The gesture was profound in ways the Justice League couldn't fully understand. A violation of sacred Mandalorian creed, a sacrifice of identity and tradition. But Din Djarin looked at each hero in turn with his own face, his own eyes, and spoke a truth that needed no cultural context. I've seen your courage, your willingness to protect the innocent. In my culture, There's a word for warriors who fight without hope of victory, who stand because standing is all that matters. He looked at Grogu one more time, then replaced his helmet. You're all Mandalorians now, whether you know it or not. Superman's jaw tightened. Wonder Woman's hand found her sword's hilt. Green Lantern's ring blazed brighter. The Flash's lightning began to arc. Cyborg's systems hummed with renewed power despite the boom tube's drain. And Batman? Batman smiled, expression so rare that Alfred would have documented it for posterity. Cyborg, the Dark Knight said. Forget the tactical retreat. New plan. What's the new plan? Cyborg asked. We teach Darkseid why you don't threaten children on Earth. Batman's voice dropped to its most dangerous register. And we show this Mandalorian exactly what the Justice League can do when someone threatens our own. Above them, Darkseid's fleet began its descent. Argus forces were regrouping. Apokolipse's elite warriors were positioning for final assault. And on the roof of a burning manor, surrounded by impossible odds, a group of heroes prepared to make their stand. Grogu peeked out from behind his guardian's shoulder, his small hand lifting. The Force gathered around him, not chaotic, not defensive. Ready, waiting for the moment his guardian needed it. The Mandalorian's hand found his blaster. For the record, he said to Batman, in my universe, plans this insane usually end badly. In ours? Batman replied. They usually end with victory. Usually. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. The first wave of parademons descended, and the true battle for Grogu's freedom began. The sky above Wayne Manor became a canvas of fire and shadow. Darkseid's warships blotted out the Gotham night, their hulls bristling with weapons that glowed with malevolent energy. Parademons swarmed like locusts, their shrieks merging into a single, horrifying chorus of impending doom. On the ground, Argus operatives found themselves caught between the Justice League and an alien armada, their human-scale weapons suddenly laughably inadequate. The Mandalorian didn't wait for the battle to come to him. With Grogu secured in the crook of his arm, he became a whirlwind of Beskar and blaster fire. He moved with Batman, the two forming an instinctive, lethal partnership. Batman's analytical precision and the Mandalorian's brutal efficiency dovetailed perfectly. A Batarang would disable a Parademon's wing, and a split second later, a blaster bolt would finish it. They fought back to back, a silent understanding passing between them. Two fathers, two warriors, protecting a child. The ship, Din grunted, deflecting an energy blast with his vambrace. I can get it airborne, but the dimensional drive is fried. I need parts. The cave has everything you need, Batman replied, ducking under a swipe from Mad Harriet's claws. He deployed a sonic emitter that sent her reeling. But we have to get you to it. Their path was blocked by a wall of new gods. Granny Goodness stood at their center, her shoulder now fully healed, her face a mask of sadistic glee. The Mandalorian reveals his face for these pathetic creatures. How touching. Lord Darkseid will add your helmet to his collection. Before she could attack, a streak of red and blue slammed into the ground between them. Superman rose from the crater, his cape tattered but his eyes burning with righteous fury. You wanted a war, Granny? You've got one. He shot forward, a living projectile that carved a path through the new god ranks. Wonder Woman followed, her battle cry echoing as she engaged Granny Goodness directly, sword against mace. The clash was titanic, each impact sending shockwaves through the earth. High above, Green Lantern wove a tapestry of emerald light, creating massive constructs, fists, shields, battering rams that harried the Apokoliptian warships. They're trying to establish an orbital blockade, he shouted over the comms. If they lock it down, no one gets in or out. Then we don't let them lock it down. The Flash's voice crackled. A red tornado forming around one of the ship's primary cannons. He vibrated through the hull, appearing inside the bridge for a fraction of a second to disable key systems before phasing out again. Their systems can't track me if I'm not really there. In the midst of the chaos, Grogu was the calm eye of the storm. Clinging to his father, he focused. His powers, no longer driven by fear, were now an extension of the Mandalorian's will. When a parademon dove at Din's blind spot, it was frozen in midair by an invisible grip and gently tossed aside. When an energy blast veered too close, a shimmering, half-seen barrier of force energy deflected it. He was conserving his strength, his large eyes tracking the flow of battle with an ancient wisdom. He's not just defending, Jon Johns observed, his form shifting to avoid a blast. He fought alongside them, his telepathy a key asset in predicting enemy movements. He is learning their tactics. He is a strategist. He's had good teachers, the Mandalorian said, his voice thick with a pride that transcended universes. He fired his grappling line, zipping towards his damaged ship as Batman provided covering fire. They reached the silver craft, its hull scarred and smoking. The Mandalorian set Grogu down inside the cockpit. "Stay," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. Grogu cooed in understanding, his small hands immediately moving to a panel of blinking lights as if he too could help with the repairs. "What do you need?" Batman asked, his gaze never leaving the surrounding battle. "The primary motivator is fused. I need a crystalline oscillator, preferably diamagnetic, and a terawatt power conduit." The Mandalorian was already tearing open an access panel with practiced hands. Batman didn't blink. "Alfred, have the Batwing deliver Crate 7 from the secondary vault. Now." "Already inbound, sir," Alfred's calm voice replied. "ETA 30 seconds. Might I suggest hurrying? Master Kalibak appears to be regenerating." Across the lawn, Kalibak was indeed stirring, his brutish form healing at an alarming rate. He rose with a roar that shook the very air, his eyes locking onto the ship. "The child is ours," he charged, a juggernaut of pure rage. Superman moved to intercept, but was caught in a bear hug by two other new gods. Wonder Woman was locked in her duel with Granny Goodness. The path was clear. The Mandalorian stood, drawing the Darksaber for the first time. The unique black blade ignited with a distinctive vim sound, its dark energy humming in the air. It was a weapon that felt wrong in this universe, a piece of another reality asserting itself. "You face the true power of Mandalore," Din Djarin declared, his voice echoing with the weight of his people's history. Kalibak laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "I face a bug with a shiny stick." The Mandalorian didn't respond with words. He met the charge head-on. The Darksaber was a blur of motion, deflecting Kalibak's powerful blows, the Beskar armor absorbing impacts that would have pulverized a mountain. It was a dance of death. The smaller, faster warrior against the unstoppable brute. The Darksaber bit deep into Kalibak's arm, and the new god howled in genuine pain. The blade was somehow capable of harming him where other weapons had failed. "The sword," Dr. Fate intoned, floating above the fray. "It cuts not just flesh, but the bonds of reality itself. It should not exist here, and yet it does." While his guardian fought, Grogu's attention was drawn upward. Darkseid's flagship was lowering, its main cannon beginning to glow with a terrible, familiar energy. The same power that had torn him from his own galaxy. The child's ears drooped. He could feel the intent behind that weapon. Not to destroy, but to capture. To cage him. He looked at his father, locked in a desperate struggle. He looked at the heroes, fighting against impossible odds for a child they barely knew. A resolve, quiet and immense, settled within him. He closed his eyes. And for the first time since his arrival, he reached out with the force not to defend or to learn, but to call. It was a silent scream across the dimensional void, a beacon of pure, desperate need. It was a call that echoed through the fabric of the multiverse, aimed at one specific presence, one bonded to him more deeply than any other. On the roof, the Mandalorian drove the Darksaber hilt deep into Kalibak's shoulder, forcing the monster to his knees. He looked back at his ship, at Grogu, and saw the child's intense concentration. He didn't understand what was happening, but he trusted him. "Whatever you're doing, kid," he muttered, "do it fast." The air around the ship began to shimmer, not with heat or energy, but with something else. The very laws of physics seemed to waver. "The dimensional instability is spiking," Cyborg warned, his systems overloading with the data. "It's not Apocalypse this time, it's coming from him." A new tear in reality opened, not the violent, fiery rupture of a boom tube, but a calm, silent gateway of blue and white light. And through it, a single figure emerged. He was clad in simple brown robes, his face weathered but kind, his presence an island of profound tranquility in the storm of battle. In his hand, he held a lightsaber, but it remained unignited. His eyes, full of wisdom and sorrow, found Grogu immediately. Luke Skywalker had answered the call. The battle, for a single, breathless moment, froze. Jedi and new God, hero and villain, all turned to look at the new arrival. He felt the dark side emanating from Darkseid's fleet, the fear and anger of the battle, and the bright, desperate light of his student. "Grogu," Luke said, his voice calm yet carrying across the cacophony. "I am here." The Mandalorian stared, his grip on the Darksaber tightening. He knew this man. He had entrusted Grogu to him. The sight was a confusing mix of relief and painful memory. Luke's gaze swept over the Justice League, pausing on Superman, on Wonder Woman, on Batman. He felt the heroism in them, the light that fought against the overwhelming darkness. He gave a slight, respectful nod. Then his eyes turned to the sky, to Darkseid's flagship. He sensed the cosmic evil within, a hunger for absolute control that dwarfed even the Emperor he had defeated. "This is not your place," Luke Skywalker said. And though he spoke softly, his words carried the weight of the Force. "The boy is under my protection. And it seems," he added, a faint, grim smile touching his lips as he looked at the assembled heroes, "he has found others willing to stand for him as well." He ignited his lightsaber. The green blade hummed to life, a symbol of hope in a universe that had never known its like. The message was clear. The reinforcements had arrived. The arrival of the Jedi Master shifted the fundamental physics of the conflict. Luke Skywalker did not move with the explosive power of Superman or the godlike might of Wonder Woman. His power was subtler, more absolute. The very air stilled around him, the chaos of battle seeming to part before his calm presence. Parademons, sensing a new and potent energy source, swarmed him. Luke's green lightsaber became a blur of motion, a perfect, impenetrable defense. He didn't slaughter them. He disabled them, his movements so efficient they appeared almost gentle. Droves of the creatures fell around him, stunned and disarmed, their shrieks silenced by precise, non-lethal strikes. "Who is that?" the Flash asked, skidding to a halt beside Batman. "A Jedi," Batman replied, the name feeling both alien and perfectly correct on his tongue. He had read Grogu's file, deciphered the fragments of history in his mind. From Grogu's universe, a keeper of the peace. Well, he's terrifyingly good at it, Flash muttered. Luke's eyes met the Mandalorians across the battlefield. A complex history passed between them in that single glance. Trust, sacrifice, the weight of a shared responsibility for the child now clutching the edge of his ship's cockpit. His ears perked in joyous relief. "Mandalorian," Luke said, his voice carrying clearly. "It is good to see you again." Din Djarin gave a single, sharp nod. The formality was a shield for the surge of emotion seeing the Jedi provoked. "Skywalker, the kid called you." "He has grown stronger than I anticipated." His call crossed realities. Luke's gaze then lifted to the descending flagship. "But the darkness here, it is immense. It seeks to consume him." As if on cue, Darkseid's voice boomed again, no longer amused, but intrigued. "A new player enters the game. Your power is ordered, structured, unlike the child's raw potential. You will both be studied." From the flagship's underbelly, a beam of solid black energy lanced down. Not an explosive weapon, but a tractor beam of pure Omega effect, designed to negate all resistance and draw its targets into a prison of absolute darkness. Superman flew into its path, his own bioelectric field flaring as he strained against the force. He was pushed back, his boots carving trenches in the earth. "I can't. Hold it," he grunted, the muscles in his neck cording with effort. Luke Skywalker stepped forward, placing himself beside the Kryptonian. He did not push back with physical strength. Instead, he raised a hand, his face a mask of serene concentration. The black beam met an invisible wall of pure force energy. It was a clash of fundamental cosmic principles, the anti-life equation's nihilistic negation against the living force's unwavering affirmation. The beam halted, shimmering in the air as the two powers contended. Cracks of white light began to spiderweb through the darkness. "Impossible," Granny Goodness whispered, her fight with Wonder Woman forgotten for a moment. "Nothing resists the Omega effect." "He's not resisting it," Dr. Fate corrected, his golden helm glowing with intense interest. "He is convincing it that it does not exist. He is asserting a more fundamental truth." Seeing their chance, the Mandalorian returned to his ship. "Batman, the parts!" The Batwing screamed overhead, dropping a reinforced crate that slammed into the ground nearby. Batman pried it open, revealing an array of advanced crystalline and energy components. The Mandalorian began working with frantic, yet precise, speed. "Cyborg," Batman barked into his comm. "Can you get a scan of that Jedi's energy signature? We need to know if we can augment it." "I'm trying," Cyborg replied, his systems whirring. "But it's like scanning a ghost. The energy reads as life itself. It's everywhere and nowhere at the same time." Wonder Woman, seizing the distraction, used her lasso to ensnare Granny Goodness. "Your master's power is being challenged. Surrender." Granny Goodness laughed, but it was strained. Darkseid does not surrender. He endures. He is. High above, the stalemate broke. With a final, immense effort, Luke Skywalker and Superman pushed together. The force and the power of Earth's greatest hero combined, and the Omega beam shattered into dissipating fragments of nothingness. A low, resonant growl echoed from the flagship. For the first time, Darkseid was not just interested. He was angered. The side of the warship opened, and Darkseid himself emerged. He did not use a boom tube. He simply stepped into the sky and descended, a dark god making planetfall. His presence was a physical weight, pressing down on every being on the battlefield. Hope dimmed. Courage wavered. He landed in the center of the ruined lawn, his red eyes burning like embers in a forge. He ignored the Justice League. He ignored the Mandalorian. His gaze was fixed solely on Luke Skywalker and behind him, Grogu. "You possess a power that defies my understanding." Darkseid's voice was a low rumble that vibrated in their bones. "It is not magic. It is not technology. It is a lie. A belief that life has inherent value. I will disprove this lie by extinguishing its source." Luke stood his ground, his lightsaber held in a ready position. Life creates the Force, and the Force gives life meaning. It cannot be extinguished, only forgotten. I am here to remind you. Darkseid's hand lifted, and a torrent of Omega beams shot forth. Not a single stream, but multiple, intelligent tendrils of energy that curved through the air, seeking to bypass Luke's defense. The Jedi Master moved, his lightsaber intercepting one beam, his free hand deflecting another with a burst of force power. But a third tendril arced around him, heading straight for Grogu. The Mandalorian was there. He threw himself in front of the cockpit, his Beskar armor absorbing the blast. The impact was tremendous, throwing him backward against the ship with a sickening crunch of metal and bone. He slumped to the ground, his helmet cracking against the scorched earth. A silent scream of pure anguish tore from Grogu's mind. The calm, strategic child vanished, replaced by a wellspring of terrified, furious power. His eyes closed and his small hands lifted. The world turned green. A dome of emerald energy erupted from Grogu, expanding outward in a silent, inexorable wave. It was not the shimmering, half-seen barrier from before. This was solid, tangible, a manifestation of the living force so pure it was visible to the naked eye. Parademons touching it simply ceased to be, not disintegrated, but peacefully. Utterly returned to the Force. New gods were thrown back, their weapons and armor turning to dust. The Apokoliptian warships hovering above were pushed upward, their hulls groaning in protest, as if the very sky was rejecting them. Darkseid took a single, involuntary step back. His Omega beams fizzled against the green light, their negation unable to combat such a potent, positive assertion of existence. The child. Wonder Woman breathed, her eyes wide with awe. He is a god. No, Luke Skywalker said, his voice filled with a mixture of pride and profound sorrow. He knelt, placing a hand on the glowing dome. It rippled at his touch, but did not harm him. He is what all life can be, when it acts in perfect harmony. He is not creating this power, he is channeling it. The Force is with him, and he is with the Force. Inside the dome, Grogu hovered above the ground, his small form the epicenter of the impossible energy. His eyes were open now, glowing with the same soft green light. He floated over to the fallen Mandalorian, his tiny hand reaching out to touch the cracked Beskar helmet. A single tear traced a path through the grime on Din Djarin's face. His eyes fluttered open, the healing energy of the Force knitting his broken body. He looked up at his son, at the godchild who had moved heaven and earth to save him. "Grogu," he whispered. The green dome began to contract, slowly, gently folding back into the child. As it faded, the battlefield was revealed, transformed. The enemy forces were in disarray, their weapons broken, their will to fight shattered by the display of pure, benevolent power. Darkseid stood alone, his expression unreadable. But his burning eyes were fixed on Grogu with a new, calculating intensity. He had not been defeated, but he had been proven wrong. The child's power was not a tool to be captured. It was a truth to be conquered, and that was a far more difficult battle. The Mandalorian struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on his ship. He looked at Luke, at the Justice League, and finally at the child who had collapsed, exhausted, into his arms. "The ship," Din said, his voice raw. "It's ready." The path was clear. The way home was open. But the cost of their departure and the attention they had drawn now hung heavy in the air. The silence was more unnerving than the battle. Darkseid stood immobile, a statue of cosmic malevolence, his red eyes processing the impossible event he had just witnessed. The child had not merely repelled his power, it had presented a philosophical counter-argument so absolute it had temporarily rewritten local reality. For the Lord of Apocalypse, a being who defined himself through the conquest of free will, this was not a defeat. It was a heresy that demanded a new, more profound crusade. He did not speak. He simply turned, and a solitary boom tube opened behind him. He stepped through, and it vanished. The unspoken message was clear. This was not a retreat, but a strategic recalibration. The war for the child was now eternal. His forces, leaderless and demoralized, began to withdraw through flickering, unstable boom tubes. The sky, once choked with Apokoliptian warships, was now just Gotham's familiar, polluted gray. The Argus forces, however, did not withdraw. Amanda Waller, her tactical suit smudged with soot but her resolve unbroken, strode forward. The Justice League moved as one, forming a protective line between her and the exhausted group by the ship. "Stand aside," Waller commanded, her voice cutting through the ringing silence. "The executive order still stands. That child is a weapon, and his guardian and his friend are now classified as hostile extraterrestrial entities. They are coming with me." Superman landed softly in front of her, his presence a wall of quiet authority. "No, Amanda. They're not. You're choosing to defy a direct order from the President of the United States?" she challenged, her eyes narrowing. "I'm choosing to protect a family," Superman corrected, his gaze sweeping over the ruined battlefield. "Look around you. This is what happens when you treat a child like a weapon. We just saw a display of power that could have leveled this city, and it was used to heal, to protect. That's not a threat. That's a lesson." Batman stepped up beside him, his cowl hiding his expression, but not the steel in his voice. "The order is invalid, Waller. You overplayed your hand. You brought an army to a civilian residence and engaged in an act of war against allies who were defending a child from a cosmic threat. The political fallout from this will keep you in hearings for a decade. Walk away." Waller's jaw tightened. She knew he was right. The optics were catastrophic, but her eyes lingered on Grogu, who was now awake but listless in the Mandalorian's arms, and on Luke Skywalker, whose calm demeanor suggested depths of power she couldn't begin to quantify. "They can't stay," she said, a final, grudging concession. "They're not staying," Luke Skywalker said, speaking for the first time to the Argus director. His voice was peaceful, yet it carried an undeniable finality. He looked at the Mandalorian. "Your ship is ready?" Din Djarin nodded, hoisting Grogu more securely in his arms. The child cooed softly, nuzzling against his chest plate. "The drive is patched. It won't hold long, but it will get us home." He looked at Batman, then at the rest of the League. "Aye. Thank you." for protecting him. It was our honor, Wonder Woman said sincerely. The Flash zipped up, a small, wrapped package in his hands. Here, for the road. He handed it to Grogu. It was a bundle of every snack food the Manor's kitchen had to offer. Grogu's ears perked up, and he accepted it with a happy gurgle. It was a simple, human gesture that seemed to break the remaining tension. Green Lantern gave a two-fingered salute. Cyborg offered a nod of respect. The message was clear. They weren't just letting a powerful entity leave. They were saying goodbye to a friend. Luke approached the Justice League. "The Force is with you," he said, his gaze lingering on each of them. "You fight for life, for compassion. In any universe, that is the heart of a Jedi. You have my gratitude." He then turned to the Mandalorian. "I will follow you through the rift. I will ensure it closes behind us." Din nodded again, the gesture heavy with unspoken understanding. He carried Grogu up the ramp into the ship. At the top, he turned back for one last look. His helmet's visor found Batman's cowl, two masked faces, two protectors, acknowledging a bond forged in fire. Then the ramp closed. The ship's engines whined to life, sputtering at first, then stabilizing. A strange, high-frequency hum filled the air as the dimensional drive engaged. The ship began to glow, its outline blurring. Luke Skywalker stood before it, his robe stirring in a wind that didn't exist. He raised a hand, and a gateway of brilliant blue and white energy tore open in the fabric of reality. Through it, they could see a fleeting glimpse of stars, arranged in unfamiliar patterns. The Star Wars galaxy. The silver ship lifted off the ground and shot into the rift. Luke gave one last, final nod to the heroes of Earth, then followed. The moment he crossed the threshold, the rift collapsed in on itself with a sound like a sigh, leaving behind only the scent of ozone and the profound silence of absence. It was over. Amanda Waller stared at the empty space where the ship had been, her face a mask of frustrated ambition. Without a word, she turned and barked orders to her remaining troops, who began a swift, disciplined withdrawal. The Justice League was left alone amidst the ruins of Wayne Manor. "Well," the Flash said, breaking the quiet. "That was a thing." "He called us Mandalorians," Green Lantern mused, a hint of pride in his voice. "He did," Superman agreed, looking at the scorched earth where the green dome of life had bloomed. "He recognized what we are, what we fight for." Batman was silent, his gaze fixed on the spot where Grogu had saved his father. He had dedicated his life to mastering fear, to using it as a weapon. But that child had shown him a power that made fear irrelevant, a power born not of darkness, but of love. Alfred's voice came softly over the comm. "Sir, the media is converging. The story is chaotic. Alien invasion, government overreach, mysterious green energy." "Handle it, Alfred," Batman replied, his voice quieter than usual. "Use the standard protocols. Blame the chaos on an experimental Wayne Tech generator malfunction exacerbated by government panic." "Very good, sir. And might I add, I am glad the young master is home." "So am I, Alfred." Batman finally turned away from the emptiness. "So am I." He looked at his teammates, these gods and heroes who had stood with him without hesitation. The manor was a wreck, but the foundation was sound. It could be rebuilt, just as they had all been rebuilt, in a way, by a small green child from a galaxy far, far away. The universe felt larger now, and somehow more full of hope. The cleanup took weeks. Wayne Manor, or what was left of it, became a fortress of construction cranes and temporary shielding. Publicly, it was a catastrophic accident at a private energy research facility. Privately, the Justice League dealt with the political fallout. Amanda Waller found her budget scrutinized and her authority curtailed. Her ends justify the means philosophy, clashing violently with the public's glimpse of a child being hunted by gods and governments. The Justice League stock, however, rose. They had been seen defending Earth from an incomprehensible threat. And the image of Superman standing between a child and an alien armada was one that even the most cynical news networks couldn't spin. In the reconstructed Batcave, deeper and more secure than ever, Batman stood before the main computer. The files on Grogu were extensive. Energy readings, psychological profiles, recordings of his telekinetic feats, and the complex waveform of the Force as it interacted with their universe. It was a treasure trove of data on a power source that defied all known physics. With a single, decisive keystroke, he encrypted it all under a Level 10 Omega protocol, accessible only to the core members of the League. He then purged every copy from Argus and every other government server that had managed to scrape a fragment of data. The child was gone, and Batman would ensure his legacy in this universe was protected, not weaponized. A soft chime indicated an incoming, secure transmission. Superman's face appeared on the main screen, the starscape of the watchtower behind him. "Any lingering traces?" Clark asked, his expression serious. "None. Waller is contained for now. The president isn't happy, but he understands the alternative was handing a toddler over to Darkseid." Batman's lips thinned. A surprisingly low bar for some. "He made an impression on all of us, Bruce," Superman said softly. "That power, it wasn't about destruction. It was about connection, about family." Batman was silent for a moment, his gaze drifting to a small, scorched metal sphere on his desk, a piece of the Razor Crest's wreckage he'd kept. He reminded me that the mission isn't just about instilling fear in the guilty. It's about giving safety to the innocent, even the ones who don't look like us. "That's always been the mission," Clark replied. "You just got a powerful reminder." He paused. "John and Cyborg have been monitoring the dimensional barriers. They're stable. No sign of Apocalypse trying to force their way through. It seems Darkseid is licking his wounds." "More planning," Batman countered. "He won't forget what he saw. A power that fundamentally opposes his own. He'll be back, but he'll be smarter next time." "Then we'll be ready," Superman said with unwavering confidence. "Together." The transmission ended, leaving Batman in the quiet hum of the cave. He picked up the metal sphere, turning it over in his gloved hand. It was cool to the touch, a simple piece of scrap. But it was a tangible connection to a brief, impossible chapter. He had thought he was protecting a lost child, but Grogu had, in his own way, protected Batman right back, reforging his certainty in why he put on the cape every night. He placed the sphere in a secure display case beside a rare Kryptonian crystal and a fragment of Themysciran pottery, a gallery of allies, a museum of hope. In a galaxy far, far away, the silver ship, looking even more battered and patched, settled onto the landing pad of a tranquil Jedi temple built on a remote green world. The air was warm, filled with the sounds of strange birds and the rustle of ancient trees. The ramp lowered, and the Mandalorian emerged, Grogu cradled in the crook of his arm. The child looked around, his large eyes taking in the familiar sights and sounds, the rich, vibrant flow of the Force in his home dimension. He let out a happy, relieved coo. Luke Skywalker stood waiting for them, a gentle smile on his face. Welcome home." Din Djarin set Grogu down on the soft grass. The child immediately toddled off towards a cluster of floating, glowing orbs, a training exercise left by other younglings. He reached out, not with fear or anger, but with calm focus, and one of the orbs gently floated into his open hand. "He's stronger," Luke observed. "He saw things," the Mandalorian said, his voice heavy with the memory. "He learned that there are other kinds of heroes, other kinds of darkness." He watched Grogu, who was now trying to stack two orbs on top of each other. It changed him. "It changed us all," Luke said. "The Force works in ways we may never fully understand. To have connected with another universe, to have found allies in a place so far away. It tells me that the light we fight for here is not alone. It exists everywhere, in countless forms." The Mandalorian nodded, a gesture of acceptance. He had fought beside men and women who were not Mandalorian, who did not follow the creed, but whose hearts held the same core value. This is the way. They protected their own. He walked over to Grogu and knelt. The child looked up at him, holding out the stacked orbs with a proud gurgle. "I know, kid," Din said, his voice soft beneath the helmet. "We're home." And as the twin suns began to set, casting long shadows across the temple grounds, a sense of peace settled over them. They were back in their own story, but they carried the echo of another. A universe of heroes who had stood with them, a proof that even across the infinite expanse of the multiverse, the bonds of family and the fight for light were constants. The adventure was over, but the legend was just beginning. The departure of Grogu and his guardians left an indelible mark on the DC universe. The Justice League had faced a threat born not of conquest, but of a child's innocence. And in doing so, they rediscovered the core of their own heroism. Batman, the eternal pessimist, now kept a small, scorched metal sphere as a reminder that some lights are too pure to be extinguished by any darkness. The encounter proved that the most universe-altering power could be wielded not for control, but for protection, and that such a force could humble even gods. While Darkseid's obsession now had a new, distant focus, Earth's defenders stood united, their resolve tempered by the memory of the child who channeled the power of life itself. The story became a quiet legend among them, a testament that in the vast, cold mechanics of the multiverse, the bonds of family, whether by blood, by creed, or by choice, are the one force that can truly bridge any distance and defy any tyranny.